address one or more topics in the time allotted. Individual employees, parents, or children should not be identified by name, title, position, grade, or building. For safety, speakers will be provided an opportunity.
This is the one that agenda items will be first, and then any other topics.
Okay, so agenda items first, and then if anybody doesn't have any more agenda questions, any time allowed after the within the 30 minutes can speak. So, Mr. Felicio, do you have an agenda question?
No, let me think of what was on the agenda. I think so. I'll step to the side.
Yeah, I'll see if anybody else has. Anybody else have an agenda question?
my treasurer's report I have two quick questions tonight. The treasurer's report, there's a special aid fund for $1.4 million. What is that fund and what is it used for?
That's where all our grant money is recorded and all grant activity.
Okay, great. And then BOCES, we received $2.7 million in state aid for BOCES. How do we spend this? Let's do again.
That's all part of our state aid, so when I talk about the sources of revenue, taxes, and then other than taxes, other sources, there's miscellaneous, and the majority of the money is state aid,
Right.
which BOCES aid is a part.
Right, but what is that exactly? Because it is a separate line item, so what does that exactly entail? Like, what kind of things would that BOCES line item go for?
It's used all to fund the budget in its entirety.
Okay, so
But
there's
we
no
don't say
specific,
that
like, you don't take BOCES just for BOCES
Yeah.
projects? Okay. All right, thank you.
Does anybody else have any agenda questions? Okay, Mr. Felicio.
Thank you. I have a number of issues here to ask the board. The first one is about elementary class coverage. And I wanted to know if that issue has been resolved, either in executive, by consensus, by a vote. We all know what the issue is. Has that been discussed, or is that going to be voted on this evening, Mr. President?
It was definitely, we definitely had a discussion on it.
Okay, let me then give, since it doesn't seem like it's going to come to closure tonight, let me give some factual information to the board. I met with a number of teachers the other day. We all know that attendance and substituting has been an issue at all our schools. Just some facts to go along with this. I met with teachers. There are children who have not been to the library in over 2 months in this school district at our elementary schools because the librarian is constantly called out to cover other classes. So kids are going without library services. Our IAs who get grant money are not being used for the legal purpose they've been hired for, and that is to provide services to our neediest kids. They are being used as substitute teachers. They are allotted 600 hours, and those hours, rather than going to children, are going to covering and acting as substitute teachers. Our RTI reading and math specialists are being used to substitute classrooms rather than providing services to children. Okay? This is educational malpractice. It's been going on for months and months. The association has been extremely patient. I've had a number of conversations with individuals, administrators, and everyone agrees. It's educationally bad policy, and to this date, mid-May, still have done nothing about it. Something needs to change quickly, because for every day our kids miss those services, that puts them closer and closer to needing more remedial services and eventually special education. The purpose of RTI, the purpose of IAs, is to prevent them from going into special services, and we are not providing those services. Something needs to change drastically. We have offered a solution, and it's fallen on deaf ears. Please consider that quickly so that our kids do not lose any more precious time that they need to get remediation. The second issue I want to bring up is one that's been going on as well. The association has been extremely patient on. I've had a number of conversations, okay, not here at your meetings over the last couple of months, and it has to do with the FERPA violation. A letter, email was sent at 8:06 a.m. following the Tuesday night board meeting on a Wednesday morning to 5 of my members. It accused them of violating federal FERPA policy.
Is this a legal issue?
No, it's not. No, it's not a legal issue. It's not a legal issue. So, okay. Yeah, please.
Yes,
I've been told that it was not an accusation. However, the email specifically says, represents a FERPA violation. There's no question in the email that was sent that it was an accusation. I have emails here also from Mrs. Adams, okay, from Ms. Losing, back to Mr. Middleman, that were foiled, okay, that specifically say, okay, when Ms. Adams says it's potentially a FERPA violation, according to Ms. Losing, you sent a very angry email on Tuesday night. Unfortunately, the contents of that email is blanked out.
it's time. You use personnel.
Huh?
You use personnel.
I apologize for that. Do I have, anybody else want to speak? Because we have like about 20 minutes left, right?
Anybody else has anything else to say?
Okay. 5th grade, I understand there's going to be a district-wide 5th grade final given this year, first week in June.
It's not a final, it's a benchmark.
A benchmark given in June when there is research, strong research evidence that students lose information over the summer. We're giving a benchmark.
I'm sorry.
We're giving a benchmark in June, which is, benchmarks from my understanding is supposed to be beginning of the school year and used to drive instruction to the teacher, not given when there's, could be confounding types of variables involved, like losing things over the summer, losing information over the summer.
It's my understanding that at the request of some of our staff, especially in the 6th grade, that they're looking for some data that will allow them to start the year off. This was a suggestion that they put forward, and we have met with the 5th grade teachers, and I would say that most of them are pretty much on board with creating the assessment and looking at it and being able to use it as a diagnostic tool.
My understanding, it's not being created. I understand there's a 2-day test, takes an hour a day. Teachers have do not see the test prior to it being administered. This smells like state test to me, and teachers can't see it. And I have to question why parents have not been notified. With 75% opt-out in this district, to withhold information on that tests are going to be given to students, 5th grade students across the district, why weren't parents notified?
This is a conversation that we'll have with the curriculum team.
But I'm asking.
I'll get back to the.
I'm asking the top
so the
management.
2 questions you had are what?
Well, parents have not been notified. I'd like to know why. And I think parents, given the opt-out movement here in this district, 75%, I think they would have something to say. It smells sneaky. It does. When I first heard about it, it didn't sound good. It sounds like something's looking to be hidden.
Again,
and why would
this is,
that happen?
I'll look at the length. I'm not sure about the length. I'm not sure about the
It's an hour over a 2-day period. That's what the math grade teachers were told by an administrator in your district.
So I'll look at the length. We use it as a diagnostic tool, similar to Ames Web, which is something that we use periodically throughout the year. It's something we do not notify parents of. So that same thought process is why we chose to create it the way we did, to use it the way we are using it. It's not a grade for a student, it's not a grade for a teacher, it's a diagnostic tool that allows our teachers who have asked for this to be able to start September with information regarding students that they have new to their buildings.
I think some parents might have something to say about them not being notified. I mean, you guys can say whatever you'd like to say, but you're giving a 2-day test. And by the way, from my understanding, you're also using Scantrons with fifth grade students, and I don't know how much familiarity and experience they have with Scantrons.
Again, our teachers are part of the process of developing these and implementation and the discussion, so I will bring it back to our director and see where we are, and I'll come back with some responses.
Mr. Middleman, not
You said the
all
teachers-
teachers.
You said the teachers are part of.
The sixth grade teachers asked for this.
Right, so who's constructing this?
I'll have to look at the actual who is constructing it.
OSIS.
We are part of a consortium that has developed tests. I'm not sure if we're actually using that assessment or assessment that we're developing on our own, but I'll get that
You're not
information to you.
using one that's developed, that's not what's communicated to teachers. And while you might be under the impression and you're communicating that teachers were aboard on this, I'm not sure that all were. I think those that showed opposition to it were stifled, okay?
To my
That is our
knowledge,
understanding.
I'm sorry.
I'm just telling you what our understanding is.
To my knowledge, there was one conversation with one individual teacher with concerns about it. The same information that I gave tonight regarding the method and the purpose and the intent was communicated by the building principal to that teacher. I did sit in on one of the fifth grade meetings at one of the buildings. Teachers were interested, excited, and wanted to participate.
So that's not exactly what we hear.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I had two more questions on the agenda. Can I ask them? Okay, great. There was a budget transfer again, back to you. Budget transfer from health and dental to PPS. I know we had someone come to council and talk to us about the district-wide climate survey, but we didn't know the price tag was $12,900. Is that what this budget transfer is for?
Yes, it is.
It's a
What
big.
was it? Wait, ask your question again?
There was a transfer from health and dental to PPS, which I don't know what PPS means.
Single personnel services.
Thank you. And then it was for $12,900, and I know at council, we were talked to about a district-wide climate survey.
So you're saying the climate survey was 12,009?
Is it $12,900? So that's my question, is that how much that survey costs?
That's correct.
That's a
No,
steep.
Whoa,
Right.
gotta stop that.
It's on hold now.
I would, whoa. I was, exactly, I was under the impression it was $6,000. How do we get to
I pulled it
12,900?
right off the thing, 12,900.
Then the board was not notified of this. The board was only notified of $6,000.
It's currently on hold.
But
So
we
then why
already,
wasn't it, I'm sorry, Eileen, why did it brought to us that it increased double?
That was a question that was asked months ago. We were talking about the 6 to 12. The only bill that we had at that time, the quote was for 6 to 12.
All right, then when did
board
you get the bill for
actually-
12,900?
The board actually said, why don't we do a K through 12, we'll pull up district-wide, and we just got the quote.
did
So
we
then
already
how is
pay
it-
for some of it? Because I know
No,
that she showed
none of
us
it.
some of the samples.
None of it has been paid for.
So none of the instruments that we saw that at council were paid for in advance, okay.
So then why was a transfer made for it?
Right, now what are we gonna do with that transfer?
The funds that weren't even approved to
The transfer is on the board agenda, but the project itself is on hold for now.
So don't we need to approve it first and then transfer the monies? I mean, that's,
You transfer it before you're ready to do that.
so you were in anticipation of this being approved for $13,000.
But the project is on hold
It's on hold because of that price. Okay,
for a variety of reasons.
okay, but one of them is because that's
price tag is-
While we're on that subject, how many questions was going to be on this climate survey?
There was a lot. There was like 70 questions, I think.
70
she said,
questions?
Right? Was it
70 questions.
70, right?
Yes.
You know what, I don't
The project's on hold for a lot of different reasons, so this
But
is,
the initial thing for listen, I can only speak for myself when I had some input on this. I said the maximum of 15 questions, and they had to be key questions. You're gonna ask 4 fifth graders to sit for 70 questions?
that's not for fifth graders. Every different grade level had different math.
So then who was answering 70 questions?
No, there was 70 questions on each of the forms that she showed us.
70 questions for
From
each
third, yes,
each
from third all
stakeholder.
the way up, there was
Each
70.
stakeholder.
So third graders were answering 70 questions?
And I did talk to
That
her,
was
there was
not-
one question
I'm
on there about LGBT community, so I did have concerns about that, a lot of parents want to speak to their kids about that on their own. I personally don't have an issue with it, but I know there are plenty that do, so they said that they had taken that part out, so I just wanted to make sure that if we do go forward with that, all those kind of questions that might be controversial to parents are looked over, that we look over that such first.
Right, for a variety of reasons right now, the project is on hold and will not be done in the 15-16 school year.
Okay, All right,
I
good.
don't even know who agreed to 70 questions. I'm still stuck on the 70 questions.
That, it was a research-based program that came through the school climate survey folks that came out of the task force. And it was something that was brought to the board months ago. The process has been,
It was a series of questions, and I said, pick your top 15 questions.
you really can, it wouldn't be statistically significant.
But then you're asking a third
Absolutely
fourth
not.
grader to ask,
What's that?
and even at, I'm gonna speak as a mom. You think my son's gonna answer 70 questions?
Well, there's been a lot of questions raised. That's why we had meetings with all the different units, and that's why right now the project is on hold and will not happen in the 15 to 16 school year.
I can't even see how we'd even go forward asking 70 questions.
And it may not, we may choose to not use this vehicle, and that's why all of the units were discussed with by administration, and the project was currently on hold.
So I'm getting the impression that PTA council knew something before we did.
No, that was part of
No,
the,
we didn't
that
get
was
a
part of
price
the
tag at
rollout to
council. I
get
pulled this
feedback
off
from all
tonight's
the different
agenda.
stakeholders.
We didn't get I found out about the survey at council, but we did not get a price tag.
I didn't even know that,
We didn't
I didn't even know
Was
the
the
survey
price
had
tag?
70
I'm sorry, I
questions.
missed that.
$12,900.
I thought it was originally 6,500 you emailed.
That's what I just answered to the board. That was the original bill for 6th through 12th grade. When the board said, why aren't we doing 12, why aren't we doing K through 12 and all the parents and all the stakeholders, that was the next bill that we got. That's what we were watching for next.
But then you should have brought to the board's attention, you got an estimate of 12.9, because I even know that the board even had a little bit of hesitation in spending the 6,500. They were a little hesitant in even spending that much.
Well,
Are you
the
talking
transfer
double
got put
that?
on the board agenda and didn't get pulled off, even though at this moment we've gotten feedback from all our stakeholders and we're not moving forward with the project, so it should have been pulled off the board
So
agenda.
the stakeholders were in favor of asking children, babies, I consider it children and.
No, we weren't, that's why we put the project on hold, we're listening to all the different stakeholder groups, that's why Gail Santo presented beautifully to all of our stakeholder groups, we got a lot of feedback from all different stakeholder groups, and the project is being put on hold indefinitely until we can find a vehicle that's better for our
And what was
kids.
the top reason for it to put on hold?
There were a lot of different reasons, many of them were very, very valid reasons, so.
Can you give two?
70 questions.
70 questions was one of them. The time of the year was another one, asking kids to do that while they're getting prepped for Regents exams. So there were many questions.
Because you brought this to the board's attention in February, so we're talking May, so from February to May.
Ms. Santo has been working with the corporation, getting more quotes, figuring out logistics. Then we had an event that happened in the district that took her off her pathway, and she did a beautiful job putting together an anti-drug task force night. And then when she got back to this, one of the pieces is talking to all the stakeholder groups, which is what she just did, and she came back with a reaction from lots of groups, and she has asked to put the project on hold, and we're going to do that. The transfer was already put in motion as of the last board meeting, because it was something that was part of the whole process, and it should have been pulled off tonight.
So it's being pulled off tonight. So then you have to make the adjustments. Any other questions, Eileen?
Yeah, I do. The budget increase last year was 180 million, again, to you, Sharon, sorry. What were the actual expenditures? In other words, what's left of that amount that is either in reserves or is not appropriated?
We're not gonna have that information until after the year is over,
Okay.
which is not till June 30.
Okay,
And then we spend all summer getting our materials together for the audit.
okay.
And then the auditors come in and do their testing and give their blessing and report by the beginning of October.
Okay, all right, so we'll know that.
Yes.
Finally, I just wanted, Oakdale Bohemia and Ronkonkoma Civic also wanted me to remind everyone that tomorrow night is the Oakdale Bohemia Civic Meet the Candidate Night Forum at Sycamore School. Ronkonkoma Civic is Thursday night at Ronkonkoma Middle School. And then there was another forum, well, I'm on that. They're both at 7 o'clock, am I right? 7 or 7:30?
One's at 7:15, I believe.
Okay, 7:15 is the Oakdale Bohemia one at Sycamore. 7 o'clock is the Ronkonkoma Civic one. But there was another forum the other night. Lisa, what was that forum, I'm sorry? At the middle school?
Dr. Saladino, the Shield,
Yeah. And
Monday
it
night.
wasn't, there was no robocall that went out about that, and it was,
It was something that was done internal to the building.
okay, because I heard it was an awesome thing, and I was just surprised that there was like no robocall and we
What was the event? I
turnout.
didn't hear the event.
I wasn't there.
No, what was the event you're speaking about?
Lisa Kennedy has more information on it. If I could give her my 40 seconds to talk about it. Nate, I know, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but it was a great thing.
Say the name of the event.
Dr. Saladino every year presents to sixth graders. He calls it the shield. And it's a shield that he had made up with all keywords: strength, perseverance, overcoming obstacles. I had emailed the board, and I also emailed some of our administrators about it happening last night. And it would be a worthwhile presentation to see at least once. All our kids that go through RMS are to go. I believe last year was the first year, but I could be wrong, where he had it held at nighttime. So this year he presented to sixth graders, and his 7th, 8th grade students were saying, well, why can't, we want to see it, we want to see it, we want to see it again, or so he scheduled a nighttime, which was last night. And the turnout was not.
Yeah, I mean, no one knew about it. Lisa knew because she's in that school.
That's an RMS event, so they didn't do an internal publication, so the principal didn't send out a robocall? No.
Okay.
No, I didn't hear anything about it.
No, I don't know.
It was a worthwhile presentation to at least see once.
Maybe it's something that,
RMS, they do,
if it's on the calendar, maybe it's something that maybe administration can throw out.
we can certainly ask them to put on the calendar.
See if we can.
I sent the
Only
email
because it is
last
a good
week.
program for the kids.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
I had a quick question regarding the referendum that's going to be on the ballot this year. Typically, people read the first 10 words of a sentence and they get the gist of what it is, and they make the decision of whether to vote yes or no. This capital reserve fund is being set up for multiple purposes, and it looks like one of the purposes is to purchase buses, and one of them might be to pay interest on capital project loans that the district has. That's way different than asking the voters to approve setting aside funds for capital projects. And I think that's way too broad to ask people. You could be ostensibly saying we're going to buy new buses, or we're going to put on a new roof, or we'll just pay down the interest on our notes. And I think it's misleading to the public when you're asking them to vote yes or no to set aside X millions of dollars into this fund ultimately. Are you using the money for capital projects, or are you going to buy buses with it? It's two totally different things. I'm just making a comment. It's misleading to the public.
Thank you, Gail.
Can I respond to that? Sure. A proposition of that nature by virtually every district is put out that way. It's put out in a way that's broad, expansive, and broad and expansive enough to allow for a bond committee to come to agreement on what should be done. The 2014 capital project is known as the 2014 bus acquisition and capital projects plan. That is how you buy buses. That is a capital purchase. So, and as far as the interest goes, they're discussing, that encompasses then the debt service on bonding. Debt service is comprised of principal and interest payments. So that's why that's put in there. So it's meant to be broad so that the scope can encompass whatever physical assets are deteriorating that are assessed by the bond committee members as requiring a capital improvement. That's done intentionally.
I'm just saying, as a voter, I would have a different feeling if you were asking me to set money aside to keep the maintenance of our buildings and our grounds up than I would of purchasing more buses. That's all. Or paying down the interest on our notes. Because that's already factored into the loans and the budget.
But it is part of that plan. And if you recall, we were replacing buses that were well past their life expectancy. They were 25 years old, I believe, some of them, with the last capital project. That is how you keep a fleet maintained, and that's equally as important as keeping a roof on, that the buses be operational. But I do understand your point, but it's not meant to be misleading. It's prepared with advice from legal counsel. The worst thing in the world is to go out for your project only to find, oh my gosh, we can't support running our transportation program because we've had 5 buses fail and we didn't make a broad enough scope in the proposition.
Well, I'll apologize that I haven't attended every budget meeting. I don't know what the plan is to purchase new buses this year. I was under the impression that we've already replaced those older buses, but again, it's quite different to ask people to approve setting aside funds for capital projects than it is to do a bus purchase or paying down the interest on a loan. It's quite different.
It's paying the interest that results from a capital project. It's paying the debt service for that portion of the funding that comes from borrowing. But I do understand what you're saying.
I don't want to be a dead horse.
No.
Anyone else have any other questions?
Good evening. In our last board meeting that we met last month, we asked the question of the board to kindly go back and perform a timely investigation of the minimum class sizes district-wide. Where do we stand with that?
There's a range, and I'm very sensitive to the constituents at Pearl. We just had a difficulty justifying a class of 11 and a class of 12 rather than a class of 23 or 22. But what we did assure Ms. White, if those numbers increase to 26, this Board of Education has been exceptionally flexible about carving out new sections. We carved out one at Boston last year and one at Cherokee. So if the numbers justify, I don't want anybody to think that the decision is final and irrevocable.
Okay, I appreciate that. When will that decision be made? Is that made over the summer time frame?
It can be over the summer. As you know, sometimes in the north end of town where we have apartments, you get a surge of enrollees in August. We've done it as late as that.
Okay. Is there a policy around the minimum class size, and can that be shared?
I believe there is.
Is that publicly available?
I wouldn't characterize the policy. It's a recommended average.
Okay.
What's carved in stone with our teacher's contract is maximum 125 students per teacher on the secondary level, grade 7 to 12.
Okay.
K to 3, we try to come in around 22, 23. 4 and 5, sometimes it's going down to grade 3. When it starts hitting 26, we can take a good look at it.
Okay. Well, thank you.
To answer your question that you actually asked,
yes.
The average class size in that grade level is 21.7.
21.7.
So your 23 is right there, your 11 and 12 is not really...
There's actually 22 enrolled right now.
Yeah, so you're 21.7, you have 22 in that.
So you're asking for a class
right
size
there
of
at the,
11?
right there at the average. It's
Our biggest concern is that right now we have a smaller class size. As this group or this community in Bohemia, there are a lot of apartment complexes. We do see surges and drops in enrollment overall. Our concern is that if these two classes were to be merged and then we were to have a larger class size, these kids are going to be at a disadvantage, and from what I see is probably one of the hardest grades. 3rd grade for my 2 kids that have already passed through it was by far the hardest grade, not factoring in Common Core, which just exacerbates the
But every
situation.
other class in the district is 21.7, so that's the average in every district, every school in our district. So we should allow one to have 11 kids?
No, we're not saying that. But what we are
I
saying is...
understand it exceeds
we will
a certain
continue to
amount.
look at it. If it
Bob
does
addressed
increase to that 26, 28 mark where other
Bob
classes
did it, yeah,
have,
Bob did
That's
address
good.
that.
then, we will monitor the situation and look at it again.
We provide the board with ongoing enrollment reports all summer long.
Okay.
Actually, 2 summers ago, when this team began, we asked for 2 separate classrooms to be split in 2 different buildings because we thought they were getting educationally too large.
And that happened before the classes started or
Yes,
midstream?
after. Before the classes started, yes, we did that in August.
And that assessment's going to be done in August this year to make sure we don't run into that
We do that
situation?
before every board meeting in the summer.
Excellent,
It's
okay.
continual enrollment reports. Because we're not ever sure what kindergarten's gonna look like either, so
You
it's
don't
something that
know.
we do over time all summer long.
Okay. Well, thank you.
The last speaker of this portion, I should say.
As everyone else who wants to speak again.
I think we have another portion, yes.
I'm Kevin Shapiro. I have 4 kids in the district. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. I realize what kind of time and effort goes into constructing these budgets, and we appreciate it. I know the work that goes in. I noticed, that the very first budget highlight, was the idea of the favorable class size, which I think we would all agree is a very important, crucial, particularly at the elementary level. Just one comment and a question, my first comment would be that being that that's obviously the most important, biggest highlight of everything, it would just seem that in the case that he spoke about the incoming John Pearl third grade, that this would be, a cut and dry perfect opportunity to really, strive to achieve that goal, for the betterment of our kids. And then my other question would be based on the prior discussion is, I think we all agree that enrollment numbers fluctuate, they ebb and they flow. What would this scenario look like? What would happen if, let's say, there was a big surge, let's say in late September, October, etc. What would then happen in John Pearl through that third grade if there were, let's say, an increase that would put us beyond that, 4, 25, 26? What would then happen to both the incoming people as well as the current class as it would be configured?
Now, would you like to answer that question?
Sure, we definitely look at it. I have to tell you though.
Can you just put your microphone on, Bob?
Sure. Realistically, in our experience, we haven't had surges past September. Traditionally, families are going to move in and settle. They know when the school year starts, and we have had surges in late August. But once the school year starts to settle in, it's fairly static at that point. Certainly, if you're talking hypothetically, sure, we take a look at it, and I realize that the backside of that is, but the class has already been formed. What are you going to do?
Well, that's what I'm asking,
exactly.
Essentially, is once it's in place, what would happen there? I don't know the research. I'll agree with you in terms of, maybe there's less surging, but, life does happen, and certainly through the school year, people move for various reasons. And
actually, we had the opposite happen last year at Pearl, and the reason there were two sections was we had 28, and then it dropped by about 5 students, 4 to 6 students. So the opposite has happened. You're asking me to explain a hypothetical, so that.
I'm just saying, if this were, I assume it must have at some point happened before, perhaps you could shed some light on what happened in those cases.
3 years ago where we had a surge in one building, and the parents seemed satisfied by putting a teaching assistant in that room for the simple reason they didn't want to break the class up. But again, we don't foreclose on any possibility.
Okay, now the other thing related to this would be, other than the teaching position, what's going to happen in terms of things like art and music, in terms of the school, your resource teachers and things like that? How might that look different moving forward, being that there's going to be one less section of class in terms of all of those other teachers, paras, etc.?
The denominator in that equation is 30. So 30 sections constitute one FTE.
Okay.
So if you have 20, you get 0.667 teacher.
So then, in other words, let's say hypothetically, I have a child who receives a certain service. What you're saying in essence is that whenever, my child needs it, that person will always be there for the required amount of time, but they may not be full-time at the building?
They may be there 3 days a week and 2 days in another building, but your child will still receive their services.
Okay. But yeah, I was just curious about what would happen in the event of, obviously splitting a class, I would say, into the school year. I think we'd all agree wouldn't be a good thing, but so in essence, the answer is, as it stands now, you just simply add a teacher's assistant to help kind of mitigate the large number.
Again, we don't foreclose on anything. I'm just telling you what happened in the past. We will monitor it closely. In our experience, if there's going to be a surge, it's generally before the start of the academic year.
Okay. And again, I'd just like to thank everyone and just say, of course, especially third grade, just for me personally, that was a year that really, I felt like, helped shape who I am. Mrs. Gilvari, may she rest in peace, really made a huge impact. Third and fourth grade were just so critically important. I would just like you to, just consider that in the thinking. Thank you.
Thank you.
One quick. My name is Lynn. I have 2 children at John Pearl, and the teacher aide that you may or may not put into this classroom
will it be fluent in Common Core, or will it just be somebody who can tie shoelaces?
And that decision hasn't been made still.
Well, that's my question. I'm a teacher aide,
Yeah.
and my daughter's in second grade going into third grade, and it's a good thing she understands the work, because some of the stuff she comes home with already, I'm like, I haven't been in school for a while. So I was told by Linda Adams that third grade does not constitute an aide. When you start third grade, there will be no aide.
But the
That's
situation is if the class enrollment got up to 26, which is what Mr. Shapiro was asking, what might we do? And one of the things that we might do is look for a teaching assistant, not an aide, teacher assistant,
Okay, that's
which is a
different.
certificated position.
Okay.
Or we might go and work with the principal and say, would you like a half-time teacher to do smaller reading groups? But these are all hypotheticals, because right now we're at 22. So at 22, that's one teacher in third grade. But if we were to get to 26 or 27 sometime in August, that would be something we would bring to the board and say, should we split now in August and have a 13 and a 14? They probably would say yes, because they've said yes in the past. The hypothetical was, in October, if we got to 26 or 27, what might happen? And there's many different scenarios, one being that we would look for a teaching aide, teaching assistant to go in that class.
Teacher assistant or teacher
Not
aide?
an aide, not an aide, a teaching assistant.
Teacher assistant.
Correct, a certificated teaching assistant. That would be one scenario, but there's multiple different things that we could do in that scenario. That's just one. If we get there, we'll have that conversation with the parents, with the teacher, with Ms. White, with Mr. Middleman as Director of Instruction.
We were blindsided by this. You said that we would have a conversation with the parents, you just said that, and nobody has spoken to parents in regards to any of this.
It's an enrollment issue. We have 22 students in one grade level, that's one class. That fits within, that's actually way below our guidelines. Right now, across the district, the average in that grade level is 21.7 across the buildings in the grade. There are some buildings that have 24 and 25 in that grade level right now. It's 22 at Pearl, that's one class.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. That was the last speaker for this portion. All right, we're moving over to personnel matters. I need a motion and a second for Schedule 1, which is resignation, terminations, leaves of absence.
Motion.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion and a second for the appointments of tenure salary and salary changes.
Motion.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.